The last 2 decades of the 20th century were a golden age of technology. The rise of cell phones, the World Wide Web, personal computing, autonomous drones.
Change is occurring so rapidly that even those involved find it difficult to keep pace.
Witnessing every milestone was the TV series Beyond 2000. Its presenters travelled the globe, searching for innovations that would give us a glimpse into the future. Now that we're in the future, it's time to look back at the tech that did and didn't change the world. From the iconic to the offbeat.
Ready?
We're travelling back.
Fire.
Before 2000. The 80s and 90s saw the rise of what was considered globally iconic.
An icon is something that blows people's minds. It's something that is so innovative and clever and unusual and striking and exciting that it just completely transforms what we thought reality was.
Some icons were world-famous landmarks.
So one of the things about globalisation as well is that it allowed us to have more access to these icons. The world was opening up. Our icons, we were going to them.
Some icons were designers and entrepreneurs who changed our outlook.
Good afternoon.
And some were brands that took over the world as we watched and waited for the next big thing that would become iconic. During the late 20th century, major brands boomed, allowing us to enjoy the best products from all over the world.
Globalisation is like giving icons a passport. It really is. It's allowed them to travel around the world.
Iconic brands influenced our daily lives. And in the small town of Elmhult, a retailing giant was changing the look of global interiors, one room at a time.
It's all a part of a new wave in design, manufacture and distribution developed here at IKEA in Sweden. This company is to furniture what Colonel Sanders was to chicken. From Jeddah to Jönköping, Wan Chai to Sydney, Paris to Reykjavik, this furniture is filling our houses.
I think there'd be very few households, particularly in the West, that would not have at least one thing from IKEA somewhere in their house.
This furniture had clean lines, was easy to maintain and impossibly cheap, because this was the furniture of the future.
IKEA's mantra is democratic design. The pillars of this were function, form, quality, sustainability and low price. They wanted to make products for everyone.
IKEA's golden rule was that all furniture had to be designed to pack in flat boxes, making storage and shipping a fraction of the cost of assembled furniture. Together with its famous tome of a catalogue, IKEA showed the world how modern Swedish design could be replicated with only an Allen key and several hours of our time.
By having these catalogues and making the products global and flat-packed, they sort of created a community of possibility where people could imagine what their homes would look like if they just had a little piece of IKEA furniture.
In 1987, IKEA's busy Elmhult warehouse was the most sophisticated in Europe.
Well, you know, it's a bit like Grand Central Station around here. And to the uninitiated, it could be just a little bit hazardous. Stop. But there are a few safety mechanisms, none of which we've been able to bring into play here. But normally everything proceeds for 9 hours with absolutely no complaints from the robots. And in that time, they can move up to 1,600 pallets in and out every day. Well, we've created so much chaos here, I think we better get out of the place.
I think what IKEA did was really tap into people wanting things to be quick and easy. We love furniture. We didn't necessarily want to go and have to walk around and really think about, would this go with that? Will the carpet work with this? It was all laid out in front of us.
From design to delivery, IKEA has remained innovative and idealistic.
IKEA have done more than just been a furniture brand. They've created culture around what it is they're doing. And in that way, I think it really has elevated them to icon status.
If only we were able to actually assemble this furniture without killing each other. In 1987, it wasn't just our interior style that was getting an upgrade. Our shoe game also got a lift, with iconic brand Nike leading the way.
The Nike brand became massive. Of course, Michael Jordan really kind of revolutionised the way that Nike was thought about in the 90s, and this is when he's winning all his rings, right? And so Nike became the brand for sort of excellence in a way.
Simon Nash took a pair of new running shoes for a spin ahead of the Seoul Olympics in 1988.
Well, I always wanted to make it into the Olympics. At least I can say I've made it onto the Olympic track. What those athletes will be wearing will be shoes that look like this. Futuristic designs, full of Freon gas in the sole and with an outer cover that's more like an extra skin than a normal shoe. In fact, it's more like a little sports car than a sports shoe. It's the result of years of painstaking research.
In the late 80s and 90s, sneakers had morphed from sporting accessories to sophisticated smart shoes.
So another aspect of Nike's success was really that they weren't just interested in looking cool, but they were actually interested in a shoe that made sense for different sports. You know, the kind of foams that they would put into their shoes for basketballers or for runners, that would be a different technique, a different strategy. So Nike's ability to think sort of ahead and really hit these niches really propelled them in the 90s.
At Nike's Sports Research Lab in Oregon, USA, Simon went for a run to find his perfect sneaker.
Well, that was fun. Let's go and see what the computer has to say about it. So what sort of shoe would you recommend for me?
Well, you don't really have a pronation problem. You don't have a problem with stability, so you could use a shoe that's very well cushioned.
Nike's air cushioning tech became standard, paving the way for trainers to evolve into custom kicks. And by collecting data on more than 3,000 foot shapes, Nike not only improved performance and sporting outcomes, they reduced injury.
So all that research and design work can literally take years to translate into a shoe that you and I can buy on the consumer shelf. In fact, it took Nike about 8 years to perfect its new air system, which, when you think about it, is only slightly longer than it takes Mercedes-Benz to come up with a new model.
They've kept innovating, they've kept designing new shoes, and in doing that, in creating new technology that makes their footwear better, Nike's trying to hit every market, and of course, that just makes you one of the icons of the industry.
Today, Nike sells around 25 pairs of sneakers a second. It seems that some iconic looks only get better with age. Like the instantly recognisable Ferrari. In 1988, the F40 was the fastest production car in the world. And it became an instant classic.
I love speed. I love it. And I'm not going to lie, I love going fast.
With a body made of carbon fibre and Kevlar, this Ferrari was similar to its Formula One cousins.
The first impression is just how flimsy it all seems. This entire nose section is very light indeed. The strength of the car, though, comes from down here, the chassis, which forms a rigid cage around the cabin and helps absorb the immense loads that the car can generate. Back here behind the driver's head is the stable for 478 horsepower. It looks quite something, doesn't it? To put that in some sort of perspective, that's the equivalent of 10 Toyota Corolla engines in a car that weighs approximately 100 kilograms less than a Toyota Corolla.
With a top speed of 325 kilometres an hour and a cornering ability to match, this was Ferrari at its finest. A race car that was also at home on the road. The F40 was Enzo Ferrari's last car. He died earlier that year. So some say it was the last real Ferrari, carrying on the legacy of the iconic brand.
And I remember driving down this country road in Italy, and I slowed right down to be hugely respectful to this old Italian man. And I remember I went past him, I looked in the revision mirror, and he got his walking stick and went like this, and I floored it, and he was just like, "Whoa-hey!" It's in their blood.
Timeless brands like Ferrari never go out of style. Neither does the most iconic drink of all time, champagne. Especially when sampled at the storied Moet and Chandon vineyard in France.
This single beautiful cloister is all that's left of the courtyard where once walked the 17th century Benedictine monk Dom Perignon. The courtyard and the abbey have disappeared, but the tradition of champagne, which Dom Perignon is credited as having founded 300 years ago, remains virtually unchanged.
At Moet and Chandon, techniques to make wine had largely stayed the same since the 18th century. But the vintage winemaker was starting to explore new methods for removing the yeast added during fermentation. Instead of manually adding and agitating the yeast sealed within the bottles, it was mixed with a natural polymer extracted from marine algae.
Now, when these beads are placed in the bottles of wine, the fermentation process can continue completely normally. But when the wine's fermentation is complete, then and ready for dégorgement or recorking, then the process of removing the yeast from the wine is far simpler. Simply an upturning of the bottle like this, and the yeast can be simply removed.
I love their energy that they approach this problem with that kind of solution, but sometimes keeping it simple is the best. I think that's because there's a real romance in being connected to the history, the artistry and skill of something like that.
While adding a polymer to the wine sounded like a great idea, the process didn't catch on.
When people drink champagne, they want to feel like they're drinking something special, not like they're drinking something mass-produced and built by a robot. And it really goes to show how much we instinctively value human connection.
Merci.
Human connection was also at the heart of the Italian fashion label United Colours of Benneton. And the 80s saw their iconic fashions take over the globe.
In the 80s, Benetton was big. It was basically the go-to fashion brand for a long time there.
Benetton's bright and bold aesthetic was the high watermark of 80s fashion.
There was a real sense that you established who you are with what you wear, what you eat, how you walk, the shoes you have, the sunglasses you wear. And they were very good at marketing themselves at doing that, but we really used those brands in some ways to define our identity.
The visionary at the helm of the company was its founder, Luciano Benetton.
Starting from nothing, he now has something like 4,500 stores around the world. In fact, a new store has opened up somewhere every day for the last 3 years. And one of his earliest shops is just down here on the Grand Canal.
While Benetton's colour-blocked stores captivated customers, it was in Treviso, about 30 kilometres from Venice, that Benetton's state-of-the-art production factory made fashion dreams a reality.
The Benetton Group really hasn't put a stitch wrong in their careful advance on the international market over the last 20 years. Their marketing and franchising skills are now studied in international business schools. But basically, their success stems from dogged determination, timely design, vibrant colours, a little luck, and a very heavy commitment in faith and capital to automated technology.
To stay competitive, it is absolutely imperative to use technology. Otherwise, you become less competitive and disappear from the market.
Benetton had built the largest storehouse in Europe and a fully automated textile factory that churned out iconic fast fashion to the masses.
Benetton really started to use these kind of advanced manufacturing techniques, which meant they could quickly get out new designs and new colours, and they were kind of up with the trends as such. That gave Benetton an advantage in the 80s that other brands didn't have, kind of like the fast fashion of today.
They devised a way to stack, store and retrieve the 40 million garments that were produced each year. And an innovative barcode system and laser sensors enabled them to sort, box and ship clothes quickly to anywhere in the world. With their shops now linked to their head office by telefax or computer, everyone from Milan to Melbourne could have access to these iconic clothes.
Really what Benetton did at the time was transformative for the fashion industry. I mean, we look back now and think, well, that has really given rise to fast fashion and the environmental consequences of that. So, you know, there has been a dark side to it, but really at the time it was revolutionary.
Large-scale engineering projects are often monuments that inspire and connect us all. In the 80s and 90s, the sky wasn't the limit. It was just the starting point. In 1988, the much-awaited Channel Tunnel had only just begun construction, though it had been proposed as early as 1802. The Japanese, on the other hand, were working to tighter deadlines.
I think the enduring image of Japan throughout the 80s is one of the future, this really futuristic society. And so these large public works are really an emblem of that drive to make things better and bigger and more advanced.
It took only 17 years for one of the most ambitious engineering projects of the 80s to be completed, linking the main island of Honshu with the North Island of Hokkaido.
Well, I guess there's not too many people throughout the world who'd start their working day with a 2-hour trip underneath the sea. But that's what we're going to do today.
This was the world's longest undersea tunnel by length, with 23 kilometres of the track built under the sea.
Well, there's quite a few trains throughout the world that have a sign in the carriage that tell you how fast you're going. This is the only one I've ever been on which tells you how deep you are. And currently we're approaching the deepest point of the tunnel, some 240 metres underneath the sea.
We're so used to thinking about tunnels, we think about the Channel Tunnel as being the iconic tunnel, but really this one was so far ahead of its time. I mean, Japan often is, particularly with transportation. But that idea that you could travel 240 metres under the sea in a train, in comfort, in relative silence, get to where you need to go at high speed was really extraordinary for its time.
At a staggering $30 billion, the tunnel bankrupted Japan Railways. But it was seen as emblematic of the Japanese economic miracle, reflecting its post-war ambition on a global scale.
I mean, the Japanese are really masters of innovation and masters of efficiency. And I think this really is an example of that technological know-how. To be able to build something like this so far ahead of its time, it really is testament to their ingenuity.
Japan's 80s were a study in engineering achievements. After the longest undersea tunnel, they created the longest series of connected bridges in the world.
And so in the 80s, Japan sort of went from this economy that was faltering to an economy that was really booming.
So much so that they could afford to create a nearly 4-kilometre bridge, linking 5 islands to the tune of $113 billion. That would be over $300 billion today.
Well, it's only when you get on this bridge that you realise what an astonishing feat of civil engineering it really is. It's a series of interconnecting bridges, viaducts and tunnels. We've got 4 lanes of carriageway on the top here, and underneath, they are double-decker bridges, of course, 2 lanes of railway.
19 Sydney Harbour bridges could fit inside the Honshu Shikoku Bridge, or 8 Golden Gate bridges could span its length. With the 2 supporting towers rising 297 metres from the straight surface, it was also one of the tallest bridges in the world.
Well, here we are, 100 metres up above The first suspension bridge. Behind me, the enormous steel cables, each one weighing 15,000 tons, supporting the bridge. It really is quite a sight.
There are a lot of theories for why Japan underwent this renaissance in the 80s of engineering and innovation. Some will tell you that it was a better education system, that they were training a lot more people, and others will tell you that it was investment, and some will tell you that it was really putting money into research and development. And so I think Japan, during the 80s, you see this in things like the Honshu Shikoku Bridge and other big engineering projects.
Iconic monuments capture the essence of a country. So when they're crumbling, it's practically a national emergency.
The statue of the Christ is not only the symbol of the city of Rio de Janeiro, but mostly a symbol of Brazil. So how important it is to restore a symbol?
When I was young, I used to have some National Geographic magazines I used to look through, and that's all I had. There was no thought that I was ever going to travel across the world to see these iconic locations. But I got there, and it was a religious moment for me. It really was. So I think a lot of people want to go to those iconic places and see those things.
In 1991, the Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, was getting a facelift. 70 years after it was first built. Standing 38 metres tall on the summit of Mount Corcovado, its epic location is admired by 2 million or so visitors each year.
Instant recognizability is a huge thing in achieving iconic status. It needs to be unmistakable from anything else.
Last year, a 12-kilogram chunk of Christ's robe came crashing down. Investigations confirmed the worst fears. It was self-destructing, due in part to basic errors in the way it was built.
Made of concrete reinforced wire mesh and covered with a mosaic of soapstone, it was found to be rusting and swelling to 12 times its original volume. This expansion caused ruptures at 26 points that needed immediate restoration.
And most destructively, it's been bolts of lightning that's been the undoing of the statue. With so many high towers and structures around, lightning strike is very common. And with each strike, the surrounding ground becomes highly charged. A charge that tries to dissipate back to the air through the reinforcing rods and conductors of the statue.
Leaning on technological advancements, fiberglass moulds were taken of the damaged areas, while the concrete was chipped away to access the rusting metal, which was replaced or scraped back and coated. The external soapstone was meticulously matched and replaced. Finally, the statue was coated with a new water-resistant silicone compound for protection, which allowed the concrete to breathe.
Globalization through the 80s and 90s meant that we could actually experience the icons from around the world, instead of maybe just reading about it in a newspaper. You could visit it or you could see it on video, and this connection to the icon made it that much more real.
It's hard to combat the forces of nature, but when national icons are in danger, people rally.
This is an icon because of almost a failure in some ways, because of a mistake. And it's kind of interesting that we can see that the tower, perhaps by itself, would not have been an icon, but because of this unusual engineering fault, it's become this huge tourist attraction.
The Leaning Tower of Pisa is still one of the most recognisable buildings in the world. Built 800 years ago, the tower began to lean during construction due to the soft subsoil, and attempts had been made to repair the tilt ever since. Due to its lean, construction of the tower halted at the third level in 1178. It remained unfinished for 100 years, and when it recommenced, adjustments were made, making one side of the upper floors taller than the other.
Well, you can see the adjustments very clear here, because You'll notice at this level, there are 4 steps.
Oh, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4. Now, on the south side, you'll see there's 6 steps.
Oh, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
6.
And it's very probable that if these adjustments had not been made, the tower would have fallen over.
Since 1935, the rate of tilt has been 1.5 millimetres a year. In an effort to preserve this icon and the tourist dollars it brought to the town of Pisa, a multi-pronged plan was created in 1995 to halt the worrying lean. First, lead weights were placed on the south side of the tower, on the principle that it should start to pull that side, and thus the whole tower, back.
So this is the completed stage 1. 600 metric tons of lead sitting on top of a belt of reinforced concrete that goes right around the tower and which contains steel cables that can be further tightened here to make sure it stays firmly locked around the base of the tower. The fact that the weights have stopped the tower's movement is an achievement in itself. But what's even more significant is that they've reduced the chance of it actually falling over by 14%.
While ongoing efforts to stabilise the iconic tower will correct its lean, it will never stand completely upright. Nor would we want it to.
The engineers will now tell you that it's going to be stable for some 200 years or something like that, which means, of course, that we get 200 more years of Instagram influencers trying to push that thing up on their Instagram too.
Iconic status is hard to attain, but it's granted to people and institutions who have dreamt big, worked hard, and changed the world. Like the 100-year-old Pasteur Institute, which bears the name of its famous founder, Louis Pasteur.
If you had to pick someone who's saved the most lives in human history, Louis Pasteur would be up there. Pasteur's legacy is to have given life to so many and given quality of life to so many people.
When you see all these dusty, fragile instruments, it's hard to believe they taught us anything about science at all. Yet using them, Pasteur was able to become one of the truly great scientists of history. His work pioneered entirely new fields in microbiology, vaccination, sterilisation and fermentation. His work in medicine alone has probably saved the lives of millions of people.
Having invented vaccines himself, the Pasteur Institute had since controlled diseases such as diphtheria, tetanus, TB, yellow fever and the plague. In the 1980s, a huge focus was on the newly discovered human immunodeficiency virus that caused AIDS. The Institute was the first to isolate the virus HIV-1 and in 1985 discovered its relative HIV-2.
So the discovery that it was a virus then meant, well, how do we treat it? And that in turn led to the development of antiretroviral drugs. Not only did they prevent so many deaths from AIDS, but they have now been used to prevent transmission.
The Pasteur Institute was also pivotal in the fight against another disease that swept the planet in 2020.
The development of the COVID vaccine is just extraordinary. That happened so fast, within a matter of months. And that's down to scientists being scientists and doing what they do really well and following in Pasteur's footsteps.
Louis Pasteur would probably have been astounded with much of the work taking place at the institute that bears his name today. But he would have been instantly familiar with the commitment here for turning science towards the practical benefit of humanity. For that, it remains an institute of hope and a fitting tribute to the great man who founded it.
Another institution of hope was undergoing change. In 1996, one of the world's most iconic religious sites, the Vatican, or more precisely its library, marked the arrival of their digital age.
You can't just come in here and browse around the shelves. You need special permission to read
and the Vatican issues only 2,000 cards each year. As you can imagine, most of the people here aren't too keen to be disturbed. But as the world rushes into a new information age, technology is about to expand this exclusive Readers Club into a membership of millions.
So big is the Vatican Library collection that if the shelved documents alone were laid out, they'd stretch from Rome to Florence. So a process began to digitise a mind-boggling 150,000 works. An estimated 50 million pages of the Vatican collection of books, manuscripts, drawings and maps were to be scanned for online use.
The digital technologies then and now not only allow us to scan and digitise these, but to actually improve them, to use technologies to enhance, to look for hidden things that are underneath. So the sort of scanning technologies that we have now really are opening up a hidden world in so many of these works.
The Vatican Library, iconic as a secretive treasure trove of knowledge for millennia, had become part of the digital information age.
I think the access to that information is such an extraordinary gift of the internet. To be able to read a book from, the New York Public Library, to look at a script that's been hidden in the vaults of the Vatican, to be able to watch the Met Opera, to access these works of art and creativity, is such a gift and a privilege of this age.
The 80s and 90s saw the rise of another icon, a man who sought to democratise information by creating an accessible operating system that would revolutionise the world. Bill Gates.
We said there'd be a computer on every desk and in every home, but it's very strange that we also said that our company would never have more than 100 people, and we were always just focused on the next step to be successful. And so it's amazing, to look now and see the impact it's had, or even the size of company we built.
In the 90s, Microsoft's operating system became the dominant platform for personal computers.
The impact of Bill Gates and his company and their vision cannot be understated. Microsoft has basically changed computing, and as we know, computing has changed the world.
Windows 95 laid the foundation for connectivity with early web browsers.
Although this technology will catch on first in the developed world, it will have more of a positive impact in the developing world, helping their education go better, letting them their medical services be better, and letting their hardworking individuals have an opportunity not dissimilar from what takes place in the richer countries.
By creating a unifying piece of software, it enabled computers to talk to each other easier, it enabled people to develop for computers easier, and this meant that innovation just skyrocketed.
Bill Gates also understood that the way to embed computers in our lives was to start from an early age, almost as though technology would be a child's second language.
It can never be too early because, of course, a kid is going to use whatever they're interested in. And titles are designed now for kids as young as 3 years old.
Bill Gates is definitely an icon. If you look at the impact that he's had with his technologies, with his products, but also with his philanthropy, those things have really shifted the dial.
Good afternoon.
You can't argue with the fact that he has left a massive, massive mark on humanity.
And we'd like to show you an example of the kind of apps that you can write.
Another giant of technology was innovating and changing the world at Apple, focusing on a younger demographic.
Even though this lesson may look fairly ordinary, it's actually a brand new classroom concept that says the need for technology in the school of the future is elementary.
This primary school, partnering with Apple, found that kids using technology were more motivated and learnt basic skills 30% faster than with traditional teaching.
The technology is a magnet. So in the old days, we were worried somewhat that the technology might isolate students. But in fact, what you see is children gathering together in groups around single computers, talking about what's going on, solving problems together.
They showed, this was actually increasing efficiency. Kids were learning faster. They were picking things up more quickly. And while we think of computers today as quite, perhaps, we're on our screens too much, back then it was like revolutionary.
Apple's vision for the 21st century was a global classroom where teachers could prepare classes from information gleaned online and students could pursue knowledge from anywhere in the world.
There are so many upsides to that democratisation of information, of knowledge. Now, not only can you find any information anywhere in the world, but you can get it translated at the click of a button. And that really allows access that is so important for humanity.
While Apple was busy furthering global communications on Earth, the European Space Agency was looking to secure global communications in the sky. And in 1989, pioneering satellite launch company Arianespace was poised to take another rocket into orbit.
Behind me, inside this massive gantry, they're preparing for the 25th launch of an Ariane rocket. In fact, you can see the lower portion of the first stage, flanked on either side by the solid boosters. In 3 days' time, this rocket will be launched into space, propelling 2 telecommunication satellites into geostationary orbit.
In the 80s, satellites began playing a larger role in shaping our everyday lives. From television, communications, weather forecasting, and data collecting, smaller satellites were being launched to cater to our global telecommunication needs.
The idea is many satellites that all connect to each other so that you have global coverage. I'm sure that at the time, people didn't realize just how revolutionary this technology was.
There was nothing more iconic in the 80s than a rocket launch. And Amanda Keller was in Guyana to witness the spectacle.
Well, Guyana tonight has turned on almost perfect conditions for the launch. The wind speed is well below the acceptable level, not a cloud in the sky, so visibility is good. This is a ringside seat. The only people closer to the launch pad are in the 2 control rooms. It's now 5 minutes to 0 hour. All we have to do is sit back and enjoy the spectacle. What a spectacle, as the rocket shoots across the Guyana sky. Once it's out of sight, the crowd turns to television monitors, waiting expectantly for news. 20 minutes after the launch, news has come through that both satellites have been deployed. Ariane's job is over. It's now up to the client to make sure the satellites are operational. It's been another successful launch for Arianespace, and judging by the faces here and those in the control room, I think we'll be celebrating well into the night.
Your shout, Chris.
Yeah, why not?
Innovators changed the world with their vision of the future. But some innovations were just a bit of fun. And practice was the only thing that could ensure your mastery of one of the most iconic crazes of the 80s, the Rubik's Cube.
I'd almost forgotten how annoying these things can be.
Yeah, well, it isn't really a puzzle, I suppose. It's more like some sort of instrument of torture.
But Rubik managed to sell thousands or hundreds of thousands of these things.
Millions? Well, counting the counterfeits, it was 150 million. Can you believe it?
It makes you wonder what sort of depraved mind could invent the thing in the first place.
He was some sort of academic, wasn't he, from Poland or somewhere? Hungary, and he's a professor of design.
All right, how come you know so much?
Well, Ian, Carl, I have to admit I did have a bit of help from an expert there. Oh, can I tell you that's where I was last week? With Rubik. Feature.
I had a Rubik's Cube. It was a love-hate relationship. And between us, I've never said this to anyone out loud, but I never solved it.
Released in 1980 and a worldwide phenomenon by 1984, the gadget spanned how-to books and counterfeits, culminating in the World Cube Championships. But unlike the computer games of the era that had us buzzing with colour and music, this trend was a study in quiet simplicity, created by Erno Rubik.
I believe people like problems and people like to solve them. And I like geometry especially, and I like problem solving. I like to play. I like to play chess and other traditional toys and games. And in my belief, all of these things are connected.
Part of the magic of the Rubik's Cube is you kind of didn't need to learn or know anything in order to play with it. It's one of those things that as soon as you pick it up, you instantly understand it.
An enigmatic man who went on to create the Rubik's Magic and the Magic Master Edition, Rubik's genius had its foundation in a love of games.
Do the ideas come from the heart or from the head?
The control of an idea, you need your brain, and you must be very objective. But to like something, to believe in something, you need your heart.
Entertainment evolved in this digital age. With a dose of technology, iconic games modernised, reshaping the way we play.
We all know how everything these days is being computerised or digitised, but somehow the game of bingo has avoided it. Until now.
32, 67, 67.
Instead of the book of cards that you get for a regular game of bingo, what I get now, having paid my money for the digital game, is just a receipt. Thank you very much. Then, having chosen a machine, all I do is touch the screen and enter the account number 71006, which is on the receipt. 71006. And then a personal identification number, 2000. And in a few moments, up come the cards on the screen. Then when the caller starts calling the numbers, all you have to do is press that card on which the numbers are flashing.
84, 84.
And if you're first to finish the card, just like in regular bingo, you shout, bingo.
32.
In the Britain of the 90s, bingo was more popular than going to the movies. But for the 3 million players of a certain age, changing the fundamentals of the game would ruffle some feathers.
I like the bingo books. I like the pens, the doodling and...
The traditional?
The old traditional bingo, yeah.
But the wife can't get on with it. The ladies can't get used to it. The ladies are used to going up and down, up and down. They can't just relax and wait for the number to play.
Although it always takes time for people to accept something new, digital bingo is off to a good start here in Britain. And with the potential to expand to hundreds of clubs right across the country, it seems set to play a big part in the way Britons redistribute their wealth in the future.
87, 85, 92, 60.
From old to young, no iconic game was immune to a facelift.
Look familiar? Because to millions of children in nearly every country of the world, Lego blocks are as a familiar part of growing up as teddy bears.
Forget teddy bears. I've made all these different ducks from just 6 blocks. Here, Simon, you have a go.
Easy.
Oh, yeah? There are over 50 million combinations from those 6 blocks.
Part of what makes Lego so iconic is its simplicity and how well it sticks to its design. It doesn't deviate too far, keeping it instantly recognizable.
The first blocks were crafted from wood, but as the world changed, so did the toys. And now they've entered the age of the computer.
Lego Technics has been designed for schools to teach the basics of engineering and computing.
All of the models are programmed and controlled through this computer. And Lego's designers have developed a very simple language, so students needn't have any previous experience with computers to program these models.
LEGO has also continued to innovate on what they do and look at other technologies and possibilities. They're all about play and fun and creativity. And in more recent years, they've even used augmented reality to create video games that you play through your phone as you're looking at a LEGO landscape that you've built.
Well, we now have LEGO that virtually puts itself away. How long will it be before LEGO can be programmed to build itself?
Hey, Simon, how'd you go with your duck?
Well, not bad, man.
Cheat!
One iconic game company has only gone from strength to strength. Nintendo ruled the electronic small screen in the 80s and 90s, with computer games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. But in 1990, they'd found a new way to game.
Video games were the hottest toy of the 80s. And in the 90s, we're likely to see a boom in the accessories which make these things even more addictive. Now, this is the Power Glove, made for the Nintendo system. It's certainly impressive looking, and the technology behind it is fairly impressive too.
Nintendo was at the forefront of the industry, each year reimagining the way we played.
What's going on? I guess I don't have to worry about my shoulder swing here, but when you're playing the virtual game, it has a whole different set of problems you have to cope with. And I guess it's a sign of the times that if you are having difficulty with your latest technological toy, a computer game coach is just a phone call away.
In 1996, you could call up a Nintendo computer games counselor.
Thanks for calling Nintendo Gameplay. This is Robin. How may I help you?
Who could guide you through the pitfalls of any of the 1,800 games on offer.
So we do have a database that gives us tips and helps us get through the game so we can tell people how to get through it.
These assistants were called pro bug testers, playing up to 16 hours a day, searching for hidden faults in the computer code.
There's times that you're playing the game over and over again at the same section, jumping into the same barrel, and it might get a little bit monotonous. However, most of the time you think, gosh, this beats serving up hamburgers at McDonald's.
When these home game consoles came out, people would get stuck on video games and they would go to the back of the booklet and they'd look at the number and they'd call the number up and they'd say, how do I defeat Ridley here? And the person on the other end of the line would go to a manual that they had on hand. Okay, how do you defeat Ridley in Metroid? Okay. And they'd tell them step by step, this is what you need to do.
The Nintendo headquarters took around 1,600 calls a day, with counsellors guiding callers through the challenges of their chosen game. With gaming already a massive business in the 90s, keeping their market share and their gamers happy was important.
So watching that clip is interesting because what these people are doing is essentially QA. They're doing quality assurance for the game post-release. Nowadays, quality assurance is a massive business. It's absolutely huge for development.
Yeah, looks like I'm back in business.
Thanks for calling Nintendo. Good luck with your tennis game.
Thanks very much, Robin. Appreciate your help. Yeah, bye-bye. It's nice to know there's always a sympathetic ear ready to listen. Unfortunately, there's only so much a computer game counsellor can do for you. Like the real thing, only patience and practice will make the perfect match.
Iconic trends emerge when innovation, promotion and cultural dynamics combine to win the public's imagination. And trends come and go until the next big thing captures our attention. But if we're talking about iconic moments in time, it doesn't get bigger or more fun than 80s and 90s fashion. From hyper-coloured tops that reacted to heat, we also had the flip side of this fashion craze for our time on the slopes.
It's difficult to keep up with fashion trends. Things change so quickly. But now you can have a winter jacket that can literally change the colour of its spots, or in this case, its stars. They're called Freezy Freakies, and they incorporate a fabric that's been treated with a special ink. Special because it changes colour with changes in temperature. Above 15 degrees Celsius, the ink is transparent, but once the temperature drops below 15 degrees, colour combinations on the jackets change and hidden designs and messages appear.
It was like you could go into the cold and you were a walking art expression. You could go in the hot and your body temperature would change the colour. It was self-expression. You were a walking chameleon.
Iconic fashions were just one way of stamping that moment in time. Another fashion moment was happening on our wrists.
I have very fond memories of my first swatch, and I think it was this kind of lime green pink, probably hideous colours, but I was so excited by it. I was so proud of having this little watch that seemed so revolutionary at the time.
In the 90s, swatches weren't just for fashion or function. They also had added value on the European slopes.
Whether you're a shredder or a skier, now there's a way to beat the queues. This watch not only lets you time your runs, it lets you pay for them as well.
Swatch Access was an early Apple Watch without the email, phone and app integration. But it was a timepiece/debit card combo that could be used to make contactless payment.
The watch is available at 360 different ski resorts around the world, and it costs about $50 to buy. Each piece contains a 1K read and write microprocessor, which can be programmed at the base station for any ticket combination. Danke. This radio transmitter at the ski lift communicates with the microchip in my watch via this antenna, which is coiled around the outside. If I stretch the antenna out, it would be as long as my arm. It works through clothing. One swipe and I'm through.
The watches were computer networked and password protected, and you could top them up at any time.
Swatch sees a future for access beyond the fashionable slopes of Switzerland.
Swatch was really laying the foundation for the modern smartwatch. The idea that this was a watch that didn't just tell the time, it could do other things as well.
It took nearly 20 years for Apple to create their iconic smartwatch, and today, Swatch's colourful watches are still seen on countless wrists. But sometimes, fashion and technology came together to create a timeless, practical classic.
It seems to me that the more you pay for a suit, the faster you ruin it with a nasty stain. And I've seen them all: tomato sauce, grease, coffee, blackcurrant juice. The list is endless. But if you've ever blotted your copybook with an indelible stain, then take heart, because the end is in sight.
Farah, a Texas company, had partnered with DuPont to create a suit where stains would be a thing of the past. Messy eaters could wipe away proof of their spills again and again.
There you go. The secret of this stain-proof suit is Teflon. That's right, it got the astronauts into space and stops our eggs from sticking to the pan, and now it's come to the rescue once again. There's a thin layer of Teflon woven into this material. It's invisible and it's impenetrable.
Teflon resisted chemical interaction with other materials, which meant water and other substances couldn't penetrate the cloth.
So Teflon is essentially it's like a special plastic. It's chemically inert, so things don't react with it. And Teflon was this material that was kind of revolutionary.
You've heard of politicians being described as Teflon coated? Well, I'm the Teflon trousered reporter. Nothing sticks to me.
The thought of applying plastic to my clothing isn't that appealing to me, but I would take it because I am a massive food spiller.
Teflon could keep your 9-to-5 suit neat and tidy, but the 90s were also about bling.
This hologrammed polyester is what's giving my jacket its shimmer. It's a spectacular three-dimensional fabric, courtesy of technology. A special chemical and heat bonding process has allowed the holograms to be transferred from this roll to this soft, flexible surface.
And there must have been something about this fabric that made Dr. Caroline West very happy.
There's something magical about having clothes that change colour and change shapes.
visual images can be there and not be there.
These were clothes created not with pigment, but with light. They were waterproof, windproof, and guaranteed to turn heads. But so many iconic fashion moments are fleeting.
So many icons kind of burn bright, then fade away. But for a time, they change how we think, how we do things, and who we want to be.
Icons take different shapes and forms.
Good afternoon.
In this day and age, being an icon is like going viral. It's easy to do, but hard to retain. And I think they're becoming fewer and far between as time goes on.
In the 80s and 90s, our passion, fueled by the latest technology, came together to craft iconic creations.
Icons leave an indelible print on humanity. The impact that had on the world, whether it was a screen icon or a fashion icon or a technological icon, it shifts things. It moves the dial for humanity in a perceptible way so that we can look back and go, that's where it started.